Good afternoon or evening, rather. Welcome to the OBAFA Operation Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee meeting. It is January the 19th. It is just a little bit after 5, and we're going to call the meeting to order. I would like to call this meeting to order. I am Belinda Queen, the chair of this committee and the District 6 representative of Prince George's County Board of Education. Thank you to everyone for being here this evening. At this time, we're going to go down to 1.2, which is the adoption of the January 19th meeting agenda. May I have a motion to approve the January 19th meeting agenda from the board members of the
So moved.
Thank you so very much, Board Member Boozer-Strucker. Can I get a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Madam Chair of the Board of Education, Dr. Miller. Thank you so very much. All in favor say aye for the members. Aye.
Roll call.
Okay. Roll call for the members. Board Member Boozer-Strucker,
Aye.
Board Member Dr. Miller,
Aye.
and Board Member Queen. Aye. Thank you so very much.
Mr. Harris is
I'm
here
sorry,
now.
Mr. Harris is it. Board Member Mr. Harris, do you approve the agenda for today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there we go. So it has been approved. Thank you so very much. At this time, we're going to go to 1.3, which is the approval of December the 8th, 2021, going back to last year, which was not that far off, but meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the December the 8th, 2021 meeting minutes?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Board Member Boozer-Strucker. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Harris. Okay, so can we get a roll call? First of all, Dr. Miller.
Aye.
Aye. Board Member
We're asking all
Boozer-Strucker.
in favor, right?
All in favor. I'm sorry, all in favor first. Thank you, ma'am. All in favor.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Now may I get a roll call? Dr. Miller,
Aye.
Board Member Boozer-Strucker,
Aye.
and Board Member Harris.
Aye.
And Board Member Queen. Aye. Thank you so very much. 4 votes of aye. At this time, we will move right on to 2.0, which is public comments. And at this time, we don't have any comments or any registered public speakers. So we're going to move right on along to 3.0, discussion and action items. 3.1, Prince George's County Public School year-end financial closing process. Okay, at this time, we're going to turn it over to our CFO, Mr. Hertzman.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Queen. So the committee has requested a brief report on our end of year fiscal closing processes. And Ms. Berkeley is going to also be displaying this. Looks like it's up. Okay, great. So each year, next slide, please. Each year, my office coordinates with many departments across the system to determine everything that needs to be completed to really close out the financial systems, ensure that all the payments are accounted for in the correct financial reporting period in alignment with generally accepted accounting principles, and prepare the financial statements for all of our various year-end audits. So we release a bulletin each year in early March that outlines everything required of our account managers and supervisors in each school and department to close out all of the financial items between April and June of that year. We then send out various reminders ahead of the most critical deadlines to make sure that everything's covered. In the presentation here, if you go through board docs, there is a link here to our year-end closing bulletin from last year that goes in a lot more detail than we're going to get into in the next couple slides. Next slide, please. So when we get back to the slides, you'll see a list of all of the financial close items that are detailed in the bulletin. The dates that I'll show you on the next slide are from on this slide are from last year. Ms. Berkeley, I think okay. We'll get back to the presentation, but
Sorry about that. I have to go back into board docs to pull it up. Give me 1 second.
Okay, great. So I'll just keep going. The dates you'll see when she pulls it back up, though, will likely change this year because we're not putting out the memo until early March. So right now, what you see is the dates from last year, and it'll probably be pretty similar. I highlighted, or just want to highlight a few that are more of system-wide importance. So in mid-April is the deadline for when we stop allowing budget transfers, really those intra-category budget adjustments that departments and schools are able to usually do on their own. That's cut off in mid-April to make sure that once the money's moved, they actually have time to procure anything and spend it. Then at the end of April, we shut down the purchasing requisition system for the rest of the fiscal year for everything except for capital purchases. This is, again, to make sure that things are well planned for and that we actually have sufficient time to, if we're buying goods or services, to receive them during the current fiscal year. And then in late May, we do the same for ending capital purchase requisitions. And the day after the fiscal year ends, on July 1st there, ensure that all the payments are made from the prior year purchase orders on any non-grant items. It's a little more complex with grants that cover multiple fiscal years, but the bigger one is for federal grants. We have to liquidate all those expenditures by September 30th in order to actually claim them. Next slide, please. And the one area we talk about most in the year-end fiscal process is exceptions that we have to make to the procurement timeline. This is anything that's needed after the cutoff dates from schools or departments where they haven't fully planned it out, so they have to ask us to reopen this system to make sure that they can procure items in that May-June timeframe. The purpose of this and the reason we do this really early is because there are, if we don't plan for it, a lot of wasteful expenditures at the end of the year. The intent isn't that you have money left over, so you just fill a room with paper or pencils or supplies or things. We want people to be planning earlier, so we have these earlier cutoffs. And these are also, anything at the end of the year is heavily scrutinized in audits, as it should be. So we want to make sure that everything is meeting strict requirements and could hold up to those audits.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Dr. Miller.
How does this impact the board members' expenditures? I'll let you finish, but I just wanted to throw that out because that's a question I have in terms of what I saw that we turned over or funds that the board members did not use and where those funds go and or how we could use them and not be frivolous. I'll say, just like you said, just buying a whole lot of things, but how we could what other ways we could use those funds. So I apologize, but I had to, when you mentioned that brought to mind a question I've had.
Sure, and I think we have found that over the last few years, there are a good number of exceptions requested from the board office in terms of just being a little later in this process, because I think at the school level and department level, account managers are very used to this being the process. But it does really work the same as the rest of the system, where if these are non-grant funds, they are pretty much use or lose before June 30th. So I think the best thing that we could do is direct anyone who's going to be spending any of their funds, whether that's board office or another department, to do those as earlier in the fiscal year, and definitely to plan for them and at least create those purchase orders by the end of April when we have that cutoff. After that, it does get complex because we have to go into this process that I'm showing you now. And that process really is that the department, or in that case, the board office, is submitting a form requesting that we are reopening the purchasing system. And then it goes to budget and purchasing to review, make sure that the money is there and that it's following all the purchasing requirements other than the cutoff date. And then it goes, escalates to the top of that level where myself and Mr. Stewart, as the purchasing director, review it and decide whether to recommend that Dr. Goldson approves or denies the request. And then it does go to Dr. Goldson. She reviews them once a week after the purchasing deadline to actually say that this one is going to move forward or this one won't because it's a frivolous payment at the end of the year or there's some requirement not met. And then once that goes through, it's more the logistics of we have to open up the system. The department has to actually place the requisition, purchasing turns it into a PO, and then we close back up the system. So there's a lot of kind of extra work that goes into it at the end, and we try to avoid this as much as possible. So Dr. Miller, to your point, there has been, I think in the last couple of years in the board office, there has been some underspending because we just didn't get things in at the end of the year. So the earlier in the year that we could look at making current year purchases, the better. So I think with that question, it really does take us to the end here. Unless there's any other questions, we'll turn it over back to Chair Queen.
Thank you so very much to our CFO, Mr. Michael Hurtman Smith. At this point, Dr. Miller, did you get to answer her question?
Yeah, partially. The reason now, this is what my concern is that board members may not have to use those funds. So is there any way we as board members can decide to reallocate those funds and don't make a donation or give a grant, I should say, to a school or to a business partner? Is there any other way we could utilize those funds rather than, because the way it seems is that the funds we don't use go into a general fund and that's it. So if there's some way we as board members could pool those funds and provide a grant to a program or school, in essence, we want to see those funds used because we don't know where they go afterwards. And that's my question.
Right. So, okay, to that question, it does work like any other department where if funds are unspent as of June 30th, it goes into our general fund balance. So you essentially don't have that budgeted as of July 1st, and it does go to the overall system savings, but it doesn't come back to your department as new money. The specifics on whether you could do a grant or not, I can't really answer that. I believe this question has been posed to the board counsel in previous years, and the advice was not to do that, but I don't have that exact opinion that they issued. So I think that we might have to do that again. And I don't know, Miss Winston, if you were involved in when that was last looked at.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to weigh in here. There is a Maryland State Board opinion that I believe we're speaking of the board's allotment funds, that they cannot be used for the purposes of making contributions or grants. And that, so therefore, the only option would be that they would revert back to the general fund.
So Ms. Winston, you said, and I'd like to see what that policy says, because you're saying that we can't give grants. I can understand the contributions because that could become political, to be honest. But the grants, if we're talking about, for programs out that serve our students, our scholars, put those funds into that program, or an after-school program or something to that effect. That's where I'm coming from. That's where my thought processes are.
Sure. And I'd be happy to forward that information to you. I think the Maryland State's opinion went to the original intent behind the allotment funds is that it is a reimbursement fund, and that the intended use was to reimburse board members for expenditures incurred in the performance of your duties, and therefore the use of those funds for making grants or contributions or would fall outside of that, but I'd be happy to send you the exact language.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Member Queen.
So welcome, Board Member Boozer Strother.
Thank you so much, Chair Queen. I'm also interested in just understanding this better through like a specific example. So say like the blueprint for Maryland's future funds, the grant funds for the high concentration of poverty schools, the principals, work with their teams to spend those funds. So what you're saying is that there's really an urgency around knowing how you're going to use those funds by that April date, and there would be less funding, say, through the end of the school year on, say, meeting any sort of emergency needs, like if you're purchasing food boxes, that you would have multiple invoices, I guess. So I'm just trying to understand this just a little better, to understand how it could impact programming if you can't make those shorter term spending decisions between April and June 30.
Sure. So I think that the important thing is that it's not that you can't spend during that period. People are spending through the end of the fiscal year. It's that you really need to think about it and plan earlier so that you have the requisitions completed by April and you know what you're doing for the end of the year. So with that, if there are actual needs, like that something came up in May and there's really no way to know about it before that, that's really why we have that exception process, to make sure that we're approving those every week. And there are situations like that that come up at the end of each year where a school didn't know that something was coming down the pipeline, and they do have to go through that process and get it approved. But the intent is definitely not to limit what people could spend. If you have a good reason to be spending in May or June, then we completely support that. We just hope that you will complete the procurement and everything before, so that we aren't in a situation where people are just making frivolous purchases at the end of the year.
Yeah, thank you so much. That definitely helps to understand. It's, that there is sort of that just in case moment, because I do know those funds in particular, the reporting, there's a report that says unspent, and we don't want to have any unspent of our blueprint funds, and I just wanted to make sure, if this was a barrier. But what you're saying is that there's always an exception. Like there's always a way to help a school get this done.
We have built into our process that ability to within our processes make an exception for cases like that. And I did want to say, sorry, I didn't specifically address the concentration of poverty grant. That is one where we definitely want to keep making sure that we spend it each year, because each year the state has not given us clarification until after the year ended of whether or not those funds would carry over. So that's one where the intent has from the original time that it was passed, I believe 3 years ago, was to not carry over those funds, but because of COVID and other reasons, they have made that decision late in the year to carry it over. And now we actually have too much carrying over of that. So we would really like to get to the point where we are fully spending those grants over the year, and there's not really that risk of not receiving the carryover.
Yeah, exactly. All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so very much. Ken, did you have any questions? Board Member Harris? Okay, well then I'll ask mine to our CFO. My question is about board office funds. We do have a fund. We have a allotted amount of money, and it's allotted to certain things. And each year is set to show the different categories of what we're going to spend the money for. And even a certain amount is allotted. I'm still, and I'm going to say the word pissed. I don't care if y'all don't like it, because I'm out of $2,500 from last year from funds that was allotted to spend for something, and then I didn't get reimbursed for it. And I just heard you say that if something was done between May and June, that it was possible for me to still get reimbursed. So why is it that board office is a little different from the school system? And why is it when we have certain amount of funds? Because my funds was allotted for this to be spent on food, because I'd already had it certain amount of money set aside to go for that. That's how I had my balance set, but yet I was not allowed to do it. So is it certain rules for certain people or certain rules for certain areas of the school system? How does it go?
So the rules are consistent across the system, but it's more than what we're able to make an exception for is the deadline in terms of extending the deadline, but we still have to follow all other purchasing rules that are in place. So I think that I can't remember the exact issue with that, but I think that might have had to do with something other than extending the deadline specifically.
Okay, so help me understand a little bit more. We have a lot of amount of funds. So let's say, for instance, and I know a lot of the money fund for food and catering under my board is over $4,000. If it's already allotted for that year, why wasn't it reimbursed? It's already set aside for that. So it was already set aside for that year. Some people may only have 500 or 1,000, but I knew that I needed a lot more allotted. So I'm trying to understand why, if it's already allotted for that, was not that allotted to be used for that.
Chair Queen, I think I have to refresh myself on the details of this one, but there is a difference between the budget allotment and the actual
That's what I want to know.
purchasing process.
Mhm.
So we have, for all of our budgets, we might set aside dollars in specific accounts, but then we have to actually take that money and spend it within the purchasing policy. So for a lot of items, that might mean that we have to, just as an example, we might have to get bids for that particular type of item, or we might have to do an RFP or whatever the requirement is within the purchasing policy that goes beyond just allocating the money for it.
Okay, and so my last thing is that it would be a reimbursement. It didn't need to go through procurement. I paid for it up front. It's a reimbursement. So what's the difference if something is reimbursed? So I just want to understand the process, because we all need to understand this process. If it's a reimbursement, and the board member has, because I even just heard you say to Dr. Miller, certain things would have to be even a reimbursement. But if it is a reimbursement and a board member has paid it up front, why wouldn't it been reimbursed? And it was done before June the 30th. Why wouldn't it have been a reimbursement?
I just want to honestly say I don't recall the exact situation, so I prefer to take it offline.
So furthermore, so just so clarification can understand, so we can understand the process going forth, even within this year. If, for instance, we had an end of year event again this year, and someone, even board member Adams, we had actually paid up front, we would still be able to be reimbursed as it was you just stated. We should have been able to be reimbursed if something was done before June the 30th.
So I don't want to really, I'm not sure, honestly, like what the exact situation was. So I'd rather like do some research and actually look into.
Okay, well, we'll do research and put it off.
There's not an issue with actually making a payment then, but I want to make sure that everything beforehand was appropriately procured before we actually committed to it. I think that could potentially be an issue.
Okay then. And then my last question, since we talking about Prince George's County Public School end of the year closeout process, I think Dr. Miller mentioned it about extra funds going in. And I don't know how the end of the year has closed out, but since we're talking about extra funds, could extra funds be used to give our teachers bonuses? We're hearing across the board that a lot of the school system are giving bonuses due to COVID, all that is going on. They've been actually going above and beyond being able to adjust. Is it a way that maybe Prince George's County Public Schools, whatever leftover we have, would we be able to give some bonuses out?
I think it would be premature for me to say yes or no to
I mean,
that.
we the board, we need to know whether we would be able to do that or not. Would we be able to do that? Would we have a little bit of extra money to be able to do that if we wanted to?
So are you talking about like actual board office funds? Or because
Not
I
just,
mean,
I'm just talking about Prince George's County Public Schools, all of our funds all together. We're still one. I'm just wondering when we're talking about the year ending financial close process, if there's extra money left over, would we be able to use some of that money to give some bonuses out, to allot some bonuses toward our teachers?
so I think that it's very different from anything we have done in the past. And I do believe that that would have to be part of our negotiated agreement. So we'd have to open up our negotiated agreements to amend and include that. In terms of actually transferring the funding, we would go through the normal process that we do for financial reviews, where we would have to move the money from one state category to another. So on that side, it is possible with board approval and county council approval to move the funding for it. But when we start talking about actually making that kind of change, I believe that we'd have to open up all of our contracts to do that. And that, of course, leads to additional requirements.
Okay, I thank you for that. But as the budget chair, I just want to open up, and I see you guys' hand to us and to our county council member and to any of the other board members who are listening. We've been going through a trying time right here, not just our county, throughout the United States, and we may want to think of thinking outside the box and thinking of ways to not only keep our teachers and our educators and all of our bus drivers and hard workers, but to give them that little extra bonus, that little extra push. And I don't even care if it's gift cards, do something different. So I just want to suggest, to us as a school system, we look at doing something different, just to let them know that we not only appreciate their hard work and their hard time to make sure that they're putting our scholars first, but we want to do something to appreciate them. So thank you so very much for answering my question.
Madam Chair, if I just don't want to give people the wrong impression that we have a large sum of money that we're not spending either. At the end of this last fiscal year, we actually slightly overspent our budget in terms of within the amounts allowed by the board's approved budget, but we actually reduced our fund balance this year, and I do anticipate that we'll see the same this last year, and I do anticipate that we'll see the same for the current year. So there's not a large pot of money sitting out there for what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you so very much for your honesty. Yes, Board Member Harris, and then Board Member Miller.
A real quick question for you, Mr. Herbstman. In terms of slide 3 of your presentation, the year and fiscal closure process, are these dates standard from year to year, or do they slide?
So these are the dates from last year. They're pretty consistent. Usually we end a lot of things on Fridays. So if it was a Thursday one year, it might be a Friday another year. We have made like slight changes over the last couple of years of like moving things a week or so, but not much more than that.
Okay, thank you.
And in early March, probably the first week of March, we will be sending out the bulletin that it shows this year's dates as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Chair Miller.
Oh, I had my hand up when you were talking about bonus, but I was going to ask Mr. Hertzman, wouldn't that still be in the same category of grants and donations? And if not, then we as a board member Queen would have to set up some kind of criteria. But I didn't realize it had to go through all these other channels too with the union. So you might want to rethink that. That was my comment.
And the reason that this is different than what Ms. Winston was talking about earlier is because I think we were talking more generally about using general fund dollars, not specifically using the board office funds that we had been talking about earlier.
Okay, but I thought Board Member Queen was making reference to the board office because that's what she prefaced her statement with. So.
Thank you. But either way, let's say if both general or board office, can you answer both ways? I mean, are you saying neither way? I mean, even a board office, I'm just thinking the way that we as a board, I mean, because I agree with Madam Chair Miller, I mean, not just for our scholars, you know, for us to be able to use the money in some form toward programs or towards something that would benefit our scholars or our teachers or, you know, our hard workers to use it where, and I understand that it goes back into general fund, but if we're able to use our funds towards something that would be beneficiary, it would, to me, it would be better for us. But I mean, if we're able to do that.
Sorry. I think that, I mean, you're able to move your fund, your actual, so there, I guess there's a difference because there's the board office funding that I think is a little more flexible. And then there's the individual amounts that each board member receives for the reimbursements. So the board office funding, I think you would be able to move around a little more to if the board had a specific initiative that you wanted to spend that funding on. I'm not completely clear on this, so we might have to do a little more research to say exactly what the parameters are on the board office funding, but it is listed outlined the specific amounts allocated to each individual board member.
Thank you so very much for your transparency as always. To our CFO, let's move right along. Is there any other questions before we move right along? I know we don't put you a little bit on a hot spot today, but you know, still got love.
All right.
Okay, so at this point, we're gonna move to 3.2, the budget moment. That's you again.
And this one will be quick. As we discussed during our planning meeting, there's no real update to share today. We're awaiting additional information analysis from the state to determine exactly what our allocation is going to be in light of like two competing factors. On the upside, know that the new Kerwin formulas are in place, but we also are seeing decreased enrollment this year, which impacts our next year budget. So we are still getting some clarification from the state on exactly what that will look like. We're meeting, or all of the school CFOs are meeting with MSDE next week on the 27th to go through our allocations. So we'll be able to provide more of an update after that on exactly what our blueprint funding will look like for FY23 next year. And I think that we said that we would keep this on the agenda for next month for an update.
Yes, we did. Thank you so very much. Did anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, well, I always got a question. So, and I'm gonna throw it out there because we all got the email today. I know all of y'all got it, and I've been asked this question, and every time people want to compare what's been done. So I know the Kerwin is kind of set for things, but is it possible for some of that funding could be used for bonuses, or does it still have to go through the union?
So whatever funding we're talking about, I think if we were talking about issuing bonuses, we would have to reopen the negotiated agreements. I believe this funding, the Kerwin is so all encompassing, it's kind of hard to talk about it as one thing, but it probably would not fit under any of the grant portions of Kerwin. The one place I'm kind of not positive about is there is a small amount, we're talking about $1.9 million for next year, that is specifically to look at our teacher salary scales, and that portion I don't believe would fit because it is specific to a couple other things, but that's the only thing I can think of. And then the one part where I think it would be most flexible is all of the Kerwin funding. That's really most of our general funding comes from there. So it's our foundation, our really most of our state aid funding is now considered Kerwin funds. And that would be the most flexible of all of our funds. And if we were to do any compensation changes or bonuses or anything like that, it would likely be coming from those general funds, but it still requires all the same things in terms of reopening contracts.
Without reopening contracts, when we got the COVID relief funds and everybody was getting all types of relief programs, it wasn't no way that we could have gotten a grant money for relief where we could have gave some relief to our teachers in a way, in another way, what same way where a lot of our parents what giving a relief to getting extra food on a card, a food card. But I'm just, I'm an outside the box thinker, but it was no way we could have gave relief to our employees to be a school system that do something different and think outside the box, something similar to that, even through the COVID relief fund.
So again, it would involve reopening contracts. I think there are districts that have looked at compensation changes. I don't know exactly where they stand with them. I know that Montgomery at some point announced some sort of change and there was pushback on it, but I don't know where that stands right now. And we sorry to keep saying this, but we would have to do a little more research to answer that, right?
Like nothing can be done, even to help to assist or to give a little relief about opening the contract. But thank you so very much. I truly appreciate it. And we will definitely look forward to the budget moment next month with an update on the blueprint for the Maryland future. And again, we thank you so very much for your report.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to move on to 3.3, which is the update preparation for in-person learning. Dr. Fawcett, our cool Dr. Fawcett is on the line. I like saying that. Is on the line for building services and staff. And I think he has Mr. Samfield on the line with him. And I believe Alex Baylor may be with him. And you guys want to provide update on what's been going on. We know our kids did return back to in-school learning on yesterday. We were just hoping that everyone had an awesome and a safe day back. We were so happy to have our scholars back in school. And I know they were so glad. And a lot of parents were so glad to get them kids out the house and back in school to get the proper learning with teachers who actually went to school to get the education, who have the patience to teach them. I know I was, even with my grandbaby, and I'm so grateful and I'm thankful for you guys. And I just want to let y'all know that I appreciate all that you do. If no one else told you today, I'll just give you a pat on the back for all of our teachers and our staff, each staff, from cleaning the schools, for doing the lunches, just being a secretary. We appreciate all you do. So at this time, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Fawcett, the COO of Building Services, to give us an update.
Thank you, Committee Chair Queen. I'd like to take this time. I do believe Mr. Sam Stefanelli, Director of Building Services, is here to give us an update. Just want to reiterate that that we did do some things while we had the opportunity. After we went to virtual learning, I do want to remind people, however, that the buildings were not empty. Our teachers did teach from the building, except for the week that the inclement weather, allowed, not allowed, but, required us to be out in an effort to keep the staff as safe as possible. But we did take advantage of the opportunity to do some other things with our building. Not a whole lot of things that different than we've been trying to do, but Mr. Stefanelli can bring us up to speed on what was done. I do believe he has a short presentation too. I don't know if you can bring that up for him, Ms. Berkeley. Mr. Stefanelli, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you at this particular point.
Thank you, Dr. Fawcett. Can we bring the presentation?
As we were waiting for the presentation to come up, I just want to say it was good to see you yesterday, Dr. Fawcett. Even though it was a home celebration from one of our own, Mr. Kevin White, but it was still good to see you on yesterday.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. As I was happy to see that the board was well represented as members of the community, turned out. Mr. White was definitely a person who we had so much love for here and had dedicated so long to Prince George's County Public Schools, so he will be missed.
Okay, so Building Services has been working diligently to prepare for this day. We've been treating this as it was our first day of school because there was a lot of moving parts. Principals needed a lot of assistance, everything from moving furniture back into classrooms to allow for not only the students to return, the full students return. So we had additional students coming into our buildings. We had to support transportation and food services to get their operations up and running. If you go to slide 2, the one thing that I want to point out to everyone every time I get a chance is, as opposed to responding to positive cases, as we originally were intended to do back in 2 years ago when we started this process, Dr. Fawcett, Dr. Coleman, Dr. Golson, and I quickly found that that was not sufficient to protect our students. We were finding out a student was positive on Thursday and they had been in the building on Monday, and now other students had been in there 3 or 4 days. Now we were going to go in and react to disinfect the facility after the fact. So we were lagging behind a few days because of the timeline between the time someone is tested and the time the results come back. So what we've decided to do, and we have been doing since the beginning of the year, is every day our building service staff disinfects and cleans our all occupied spaces at each facility as if there was a positive case in that facility. So we can rest assured that when the students come back the next day, or just the teachers or whomever occupies that building, that it has been disinfected thoroughly. And even if there is a positive case, we don't need to react. We can just keep on going with our educational process, and the students are already protected. So that's a major change that took place in the fall, and we'll continue to do that. So our facilities remain safe as we could possibly make them. Just to kind of give you an update on what we did, along with that process, starting January 23rd, which was the last day for students, we thoroughly cleaned all the facilities. We authorized an additional 3,000 labor hours to assist principals in buildings that were dealing with COVID-related absenteeism for custodial staff. One thing that people fail to realize is that our custodial staffs are the most important people in this process, and they too were quarantined for a quarter period of time. We may lose an entire night staff, so we have to bring in extra help. And Antoine Taylor, who's our supervisor of operations, has a plan along with Alex Baylor to supplement the workforce on a daily basis if that indeed does happen. So we continue to protect the buildings. Starting January 10th, which was 1 week before the students arrived, after we got all the buildings together, we instructed all the facilities to one more time sanitize our buildings. We used our Adibot ultraviolet light systems where we could. We used our Victory sprayers and our Clorox 360 electrostatic sprayers to a second time go through and disinfect all our facilities once they were unoccupied by teachers and other staff, and we had the buildings to ourselves for that week because of the inclement weather. Kind of helped us there. And last but not least, the Friday before we returned, we had all of our staff check all the soap dispensers, paper towel dispensers, sanitizers, dispensers in every facility, just to ensure that there was an adequate supply. And if you know me, the one thing that my pet peeve is, I would rather not have a dispenser than have an empty dispenser. And so I can't stand when I go into a facility and I have a dispenser and it doesn't have any sanitizer in it. That's, in my opinion, that's worse than not having a sanitizer at all. So our staff is routinely on top of those to make sure they're filled and ready to go. And that's pretty much it. We continue to sanitize all of our facilities every day. Alex Baylor and his team staying ready to assist Mr. Taylor with any assistance that they need because of absenteeism or COVID outbreaks within a school on the custodial staff. And we have a plan moving forward to keep our inhabitants safe throughout the school year. Any questions?
I don't have a question. I want to jump in there, Mr. Sullivan. I just want to add that I just want to let Board Member Queen and the rest of the board members know that we currently do not have a shortage of any type of cleaning supplies, sanitizer, soap. So if there's a situation where something is not filled or is not present, we can actually, definitely attribute that to human error, either not filling them or not making sure that it's in the building. But if we are notified, we will do our best to expeditiously get those supplies to any building in the school system, whether it be an administrative building or a school, as quickly as possible. I think Sam can reiterate the fact that if we're notified, we can literally in this county have of that product in the building within a half an hour, depending on where it is in the county. And we're so large, but we'll make sure that happens, because our warehouse is stocked with those supplies, and as during entire COVID, we've kept the stock of those cleaning supplies there.
And where we could, our goal was to have enough supplies in the facility right now to get us through the end of the school year. It's very difficult to determine how much sanitizer you're going to use, for instance. Some days the kids don't use it at all. Some days they use a lot. But there is an adequate supply in every school. And if there isn't, working with Jonathan in the warehouse, we have a supply at our training center, so we can quickly get any supply to any school. Usually within a couple of hours, we can have that at the school. Thank you, Dr. Fawcett, for bringing that up.
Thank you so very much. At this time, I'm going to recognize one of our guest board members who's a guest, and we do have two guest board members. And I'm sorry, in the beginning, I didn't recognize that we do have guest board members on today. If they are guests, they will not be voting on any of the issues because they are not member of the board, but they are board members, so they are allowed to participate if we call on them. We do have our guest board member with us today. Board members Shayla Adams Stafford. We have guest board member Judy Meekin Murray today. So we definitely welcome you to participate here in the BAFA committee. Yes, board member Adam Staff.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation. I know that many families in my community have been concerned about school readiness and cleanliness as they prepare to send their students back. One question that has come up has been about schools that have seen increases in enrollment and population size, possibly having a reallocation of more custodial staff to support with the cleaning. And I just wanted to see if that has been discussed or possibly, I know I've asked about that before, even more part-time staff for schools with larger amounts of students. And now considering that we will have students coming back from virtual learning, which could increase classroom sizes in many cases, sort of how does staffing play into the way that we're going to maintain the cleanliness of the schools?
First of all, the custodial staffing is allocated by the square foot of the building. The occupants do play a part. However, when you start to have overcrowded schools, which we do, the demand on the facility starts to outweigh the ability of the custodial staff to keep up. So we try to use temporary employees where we can to fill in those voids where we have schools, especially with extreme overcrowding. It's more to assist the principal, because there's so much demand on the day staff. And typically all of our elementary schools have one person. When you have 1,400 students in an elementary school, that one person gets overwhelmed trying to support those 1,400 students. So where we can and where it is brought to our attention, we try to augment the staff as best we can.
Okay, and you said you all are using a temporary staffing agency to support the.
Well, no, they're temporary. They're Prince George's County employees, but they're paid as temporary employees, like a substitute. So we can hire them for a short period of time. In order to get more custodial help, we have to go through the budget process and get allocated FTEs. The budget office gives us a pool of temporary money so we can help backfill absenteeism. When we have special situations where we have to bring in employees quickly, we can do so on a temporary basis.
And just my last follow-up here, did any of the funding that we received from the federal government in terms of COVID relief, did it provide for any additional support with sanitization in terms of staffing, or could it have been allocated for that at all?
It wasn't allocated for staffing.
Mhm.
However, it was allocated for overtime. So it does give us the ability to, the 3,000 hours that I showed you that we spent extra helping the building, that's the overtime that the federal government, the ESSER 2 grant provided for us. So whenever we have an issue, we do have the funding to send people in. And to be honest with you, when we're dealing with this, it for me, it's preferable to send my staff in on overtime that's already trained than to bring in new staff and train them for a short period of time. So that's why we had overtime allocation as opposed to extra staffing. I don't think the URSA account, Mike could answer this, would fund a permanent position. They were funding the positions just on a temporary basis, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's correct. The ESSER grant is term limited.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that we've been very reluctant to add full-time positions to this grant, to any of the federal funds, because we would be hiring them knowing that that position would likely be ended when the grant actually ends. So we do prefer to say, to do it the way that Mr. Stefanelli talked about when we're talking about grant funds, instead of, we have in the past had situations where we have put employees on grants and then we've had to terminate their employment when the grant ended, and we'd like to do anything to avoid that.
And on top of this, we're having the same issues with finding qualified candidates for our positions that food service, that transportation is having, and that the rest of the Washington area. It's very, very difficult to fill our custodial positions as well.
Okay, thank you. So just making sure I'm clear. So you're saying that the grant funding, as opposed to hiring more staff, you have leveraged that to provide more overtime for existing staff, because when the grant ends, that could terminate the person's employment because it's term limited.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. And so in order to increase the custodial staff, that would have to be in the budget to create more full-time or part-time positions for custodial staff.
Yes.
But right now, the part-time positions are available like on the website.
They typically are at this moment. I'm not sure. We put those up periodically and they run until filled. I haven't looked today, but we're working on a daily basis with our partners in human resources to interview and hire people. Every, just about every day, we're bringing in new people for the custodial staffs.
And let me jump in there, Sam, just to say that, yeah, once again, I do want to commend our Human Resources Department for actively working with us, filling those positions. But anytime you have a temporary position, those are positions that, are not long-term. So unless we're able to move that person into an open position, typically there's a lot of turnover there, because as soon as that person gets something somewhere full of permanent, they will take it, even if it's in our school system. So what we try to do is those temporary positions, especially ones that are on the custodial side, that as soon as there's a position available, we roll them into a full-time position, so that they will stay with us. That's always our goal, and Human Resources works with us diligently to make sure that occurs. But there always is availability for us to have temporary employees to add that extra help, where we need it.
Well, Dr. Miller, did you still have questions?
No, my question was similar to what Board Member Adam Stafford brought up about the staffing.
Thank you so very much. Okay, if no other board member, I do have a couple of questions. It's still with the staffing. And I'm not sure if it's Mr. Sam or Dr. Fawcett, which one would answer that. For schools who are already short-staffed, I know I sent the email today, my school at William Hall, where they're already understaffed. And I saw the nice presentation, and y'all know me, I got my phone right here. I even took a picture of the nice little mission of Prince George's County Public School. I think it's so cute when we do that. We have our little mission out here, but we got to follow that mission. And it was really nice for you to emphasize on that mission, Mr. Stanfield, that all occupied spaces of each and every day at the end of the day, as if it has a positive COVID-19 case in the facility. But if we have a school that's short 2 janitors, And how is that done? Are we overworking one person to do that? To make sure that is done at one school, if we know that we have a school that's short 2 janitors?
And that's an issue. What we do is we have teams of people that go around, and that's what we use the overtime for, to help supplement those workforces. And at William Hall, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we spent quite a bit of time in there over the Christmas break because of the shortage. We had to go in and help bring that school up to par, and we're keeping an eye on that. And Antoine met with HR today specifically about filling those vacant positions.
Okay.
But that's a challenge for us, and we're doing everything we can to make sure we have enough staff there on a nightly basis to do what we need to do.
Okay, because that's very important, because you guys know that school had a lot. I mean, we're talking about 4 classes out at one time for
Right.
COVID cases. And if we don't get the proper staff in that school, that's what happened. Because I know as much as one person would like to be able to do it, after a while, that person is human. We all are human, and you're going to get tired, and there's going to be some things that are going to be overlooked. It's going to be some spots that's going to be missed. And it's not because that person didn't care, it's because the person was overworked and tired. So we want to make sure that we're covering all bases, and we're doing just as our mission say, that we're cleaning each and every school at the end of the day, like it is a COVID case. So where our schools are short, I just want to emphasize, when we know we need the manpower for so many number of students at a school, we need to make sure as a school system that we're doing that, because our parents, and we don't want, even the Board of Education don't want, and I know our CEO don't want, we don't want to have to shut our schools down because of COVID. We want to make sure that our scholars are getting the education required, that they're catching up. And I'm sure our babies, our scholars want to stay in school and get away from home too. But to do that, it is going to take each and every one of us. And so we're here for you, whatever you guys need. That's why we're here as the Board of Ed. I know our Madam Chair would agree, whatever you guys need. But we just want to make sure that our babies are in schools that are safe and clean. And whatever you guys need, we want to make sure that we're able to provide it to keep our schools right here in Prince George's County open. So again, we thank you so very much for your report. Okay, at this time, we're going to move right along, and we have a presentation. So we had 3.4, which is our Climate Change Action Plan Focus Work Group report. Our board member, Booza Feather, she is the chair of the Climate Change Action Committee. I sat in on the committee a little bit today. She's going to talk about the plan work group, and she's going to provide a report. It was interesting listening today. I was listening in, and while I was with the grandbaby, she was getting her COVID shot.
All right. But saw that you attended. Thank you so much for being there. And I'd also like to introduce Joseph Jakuda, who is our lead volunteer on the committee, serving as my co-chair. He is a PGCPS parent and leads the Sierra Club's climate parents. So his network throughout the county, has been an advocate for years, and in his career is an expert in the environment. So our purpose today is we wanted to kind of acclimate my board member colleagues to what we've been doing, so that when this draft plan comes to you, that you've seen some resources that you could already utilize, and then also to use those resources to sort of be the data backup. We've spent many months on research and data collection, and so I wanted to just acknowledge that, well, number one, Valerie Irvin, who's here in the meeting, has been our liaison to Dr. Goldson. So we've had tremendous support and partnership with administration. So I'm thrilled about that. And Dr. Goldson did address the work group in December. Over the many months, Mr. Stefanelli, Dr. Facette, Dr. Coleman were with us for all of the operations discussions. So we had their immediate feedback and expertise. And I do want to acknowledge that folks who are not with us today, Dr. Saunders from Transportation, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Matlock, and then serving with us through this entire time and drafting the plan, CPS employees, Jamie Alston, Don Holton, David Hill, and then from our labor partners, Martin Diggs and Kevin Kennedy. And I'm focused more on the operations side. We certainly have other folks on the education and outreach and some other elements of the plan. And I hope that Mr. Stefanelli, Dr. Frissett, and Dr. Coleman, if you want to offer anything as Joseph gets into a couple recommendations, that would be great as well. So what I first wanted to remind all the board members and administration and anyone else interested is that we've collected all of our work on a website. So we have the pgcps.org/climate website. And so what we've been able to gather for the board is, as we documented some climate action work already happening in PGCPS, we've added that here. We've documented curriculum, CTE programs, our statewide recognized green school program. We have the most green schools in the state. All the school buildings where we have geothermal heat pumps, the technology and solar, this is, PGCPS has not done this before. So to bring it all together and say, actually we have been leading. One thing we've learned, and even from the advocacy community, is that PGCPS has been doing a lot more than folks recognize. And even me as a board member, many of us. So this has been an incredible experience in that regard as well. And so on this website is all of our meetings are recorded. So when you get the plan draft and say you want to understand more of the discussion about bus electrification, there is a recording of that meeting where we are talking through all of this with all the directors of PGCPS. So I wanted to make sure board members know that this is available. And if it's a new topic area, so that if you go to recommendations, you're like, I don't really understand stormwater management in the system. I don't really know what we've been doing. We have that. It's been documented. So this will help bring all that context to the recommendations and answer some questions. And of course, we'll do that in the board meetings. So I wanted to remind everyone kind of like the framework of where we started as a board. When we voted for the work group, we also voted on some key goals, and this work plan will help us get there. And so that was 100% clean sourced electricity by 2030. And Joseph can talk a little more to that. That's the expert area of his. 100% clean energy in all energy sectors, including heating, ventilation, our HVAC systems, and cooking by 2040. 100% clean transportation by 2040, and that's the bus electrification, and our fleet. 100% zero waste food by 2030. That's our composting program. And then 100% zero landfill waste by 2040. And this is all, we already do a very good job on materials recycling, but there's certainly going to be changes in how materials come to the building, and more and more green technologies and ways to recycle this waste that we certainly can implement over time. We have some other areas that weren't specifically noted here, particularly education, outreach, curriculum. We'll be talking about that at the Academic Achievement Committee meeting. We also have, we will absolutely be increasing our advocacy efforts in Annapolis and with the county council. There's a lot happening now and in the future, and student advocacy throughout the system, from the buildings to what they bring home, make change at home and in the community. It's all in here. So it's a very, very big plan. And then one other aspect is that stormwater management and the flooding on our grounds and managing that into the future. So with that, I just wanted to ask Joseph if he would introduce himself and his work, and also give us one or two examples of where we're headed operationally, and then we could take some questions and answer your questions from there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Boozer Strother, and thank you, Chair Queen and the committee for letting me speak this evening. Yeah, my name is Joseph Jakuda. I'm a proud Prince George's County parent, dad of two. I have a first grader and a pre-K 3. And I've lived in Prince George's County the majority of my adult life. I work in the environmental field in my day job and have been very active with the Sierra Club's Climate Parents campaign for several years now. And in this effort to call on our school district to go 100% clean energy. I wanted to speak mostly to the idea of the bus electrification, though obviously all of the various topic areas that we have been discussing in the work group are going to have budget and operations ramifications. I think the electric bus one, it's a little bit fresh on our minds because we were just talking about this in the prior meeting, but also it's one that we found through our surveys, really resonates with the students and the population at large. They, students know that when they get on the bus that they are breathing harmful particulates that are going to affect them, especially if they have asthma. And so there's a lot of really great benefits to the students with this kind of approach. But as far as the budgets in operation, there are a variety of different approaches to electrification. And the one we heard from earlier is that's actually the same one that's being pursued by our neighbors over Montgomery County. It's a very interesting approach that allows the budget impacts to be minimal, if not even positive. It's it's the idea is that instead of one of the problems with bus electrification is that there's a very high upfront cost to purchasing the electric buses at this point. Those costs are coming down over time, and right now it is kind of prohibitively expensive to purchase a lot of them. But what this company that we heard from and others are doing is doing an approach that's very similar to what you do with solar panels. It's a subscription model. I know that when I installed solar panels on my roof, it was way too expensive to buy a bunch of panels to put up there, but I really wanted the long-term savings. So I subscribe to them. I don't own the panels on my roof, but I get the benefits of the utility reductions. And this is the same type of thing with the school buses. Essentially, you would work with the company to it's kind of like leasing the buses over a long-term period, about 12 years. And this allows the upfront cost to be amortized over that period. But then on the other side, there's a lot of savings in terms of maintenance of buses because they don't have as many moving parts. There's a lot of savings in terms of fuel because the electricity is cheaper than the diesel. And there's also a possible financial benefit from actually using the buses during the summer to sell power back to the grid when they're not needed for the schools. And it's also a good time for the air in general because that's when pollution is the worst, when everyone's running their air conditioners. And so this kind of win-win-win, and it's and as a result that we saw in this tool that that was provided, that some years the cost would be sort of parity with running diesel buses, and other years there would actually be a slight economic benefit or a slight budget benefit to PGCPS with this kind of model. And now operationally, because I'm very concerned about, until very recently I was in the union myself, and I'm very concerned about the labor ramifications too. And this type of model would still allow us all have the same bus drivers. I would have the same bus driver. My kids would see every morning. There probably would be necessary training to go with this because the electric buses are a little different than the diesel buses. And there also will be maintenance training as well, but the same maintenance staff would be able to perform the stuff and might even have extra free time because the maintenance needs would be less to work on other maintenance backlogs. So this is the kind of thing where there will definitely be a change, and but even just from the health benefit, it's certainly worth it. But the various other approaches we've heard can lead to benefits throughout PGCPS in terms of budget and operations. And this isn't the only one. We've heard about buildings, we've heard about solar panels on the buildings, we've heard about food waste, and a lot of these have these same sort of win-wins available to them. But I want to focus on buses because it's also near and dear to my heart, because I know when my child's on that bus, I'm glad he doesn't have asthma, because I know it's the diesel pollution is really bad for him. And I guess that's it. Thank you for hearing me, and I'm here for any questions.
All right, thank you, Joseph. And I, give a little more context to, that was what Joseph was describing is just one of many recommendations. And I think you get a pretty good sense of how many moving parts there will be for this systemic change and reduction of how we've been doing things in carbon emissions. Some of it is already naturally progressing, like Joseph mentioned, with new school construction and buildings. The state is moving towards these very high LEED certification, solar panel ready, net zero energy schools, and where we are positioned as PGCPS, having a plan, having readiness demonstrated allows us to be ready for the grant opportunities coming from the federal and state level. And that is a critical piece of this, is the expertise and oversight. So I think Joseph has addressed this board in public comment, as well as our recommendation of how Dr. Goldson might ensure the staffing of this and the oversight becomes one of the highest level considerations in the system. And so that is, of course, one of our recommendations. And when you review the recommendations, you'll be given the concept of, is this within PGCPS's control, or are we going to have external partnerships? We'll also be including if this is an existing initiative alignment, sort of like the geothermal. We already are doing geothermal. We're moving forward with it. We've already committed operational readiness. Does PGCPS already have the capacity, the cost effectiveness, which is where we, I think, really hope to show over time that not only does, what's good for the planet, pays for itself, we believe it actually could produce savings that could be then realized and moved to other budget categories. And then, of course, we will presume some timelines. And then one thing we're also doing is something that the County Climate Commission has recommended, is really understanding the co-benefits of the work. So we also are looking at community health, and is it education? We'll be coding this as, a co-benefit is what Joseph said with electric buses is, this is a serious health issue for our communities. So we'll have the co-benefit of health, we'll have co-benefits of education and learning, co-benefits of equity in communities, and that will all be spelled out in the plan. And also how PGCPS is meeting its commitments to the county's climate action plan, which was commissioned by the county council last year. That work is now, the plan has been sent to the county council. It is deep and in depth, and the PGCPS was represented by Donald Bell for that plan. And PGCPS is, essentially noted where it's expected for PGCPS to be part of meeting these goals for carbon emission reductions, and we'll be able to align it. We'll be able to show that we are doing our part. And I think that's a really important leadership that we can show as the first agency that is fully planned and ready to go in the county. So I'm really proud of that as well. So I'll just pause for a moment for questions. And again, I invite Mr. Stefanelli, Dr. Percent, Dr. Coleman, if you have anything you wanted to add, or Valerie, would love to hear from you.
Ms. Irvin?
Board Member Boozer Strother, it's Valerie here. I just wanted to make a couple of mentions while Mr. Stefanelli is on the line and Dr. Fawcett, and that is every single meeting that we had where people outside of Prince George's County who were known regionally or nationally came to present to the working group, they walked away so impressed by how much is already going on here inside Prince George's County Public Schools, and Mark Fawcett should be commended for his incredible staff that has been part of the working group from its inception. And Mr. Stefanelli, who knows everything there is to know about electric buses. And we learned so much from our own team that it was really gratifying to be part of this effort. And I also wanted to end by saying it's not lost on me the environmental impacts of a community that's African-American and Latino, and the role that this working group will play in environmental justice, because we all know that in some of the poorest communities throughout Prince George's County is where the impacts of these things are felt. And so students, and I think I would like to have Board Member Boozer Strother talk about the student piece, which is really, really exciting, and how much the students dug in because they want to see a world where they're growing up, where they can breathe fresh air and eat good food grown locally and maybe even produced inside the school system as well. So I really have appreciated serving with you, Board Member Boozer Strother. It's been serious work. It's been fun at times, but we know we're going to make a mark.
Thank you so much, Ms. Irvin. Yeah, it's been so great to have your support and enthusiasm and the knowledge that you've brought to the work as well. And you know, I will speak to the students for a moment, but Joseph, it's I believe you were just with the Green Club of Eleanor Roosevelt High School this evening, right? I mean, I think you probably can give some really fresh perspective on how the students are feeling about this plan and how they're contributing.
They were very excited to hear on all the updates. One of the members of the Environmental Defense Club in Eleanor Roosevelt's on the work group, so I'm sure she's been also. It probably wasn't a surprise what I had to say, but they're also very excited about composting. They're trying to get their composting program up and running. And I guess they were definitely sad that they had to put it on hold because of the past few weeks of being out, but they're excited to get it back going.
Yeah, and I would say that enthusiasm has been there from the very beginning. We now have had we had 2 students start in representation of last school year, and then we have 3 students this year, and all of them have been significant contributors at the work group level, going back to their green clubs at school, their Envirothon teams, through sort of a network throughout the county that Donald Bell and how he works with the high schools and middle schools has brought students together that I think ultimately, I do envision that the students will help develop something that might look sort of like our student government network across all the schools where they can learn together and then create initiatives together so they're reaching all corners of the county. And so I think we'll head there, and they are so interested in legislative advocacy too. So I know we could easily do a student-led climate action advocacy night in Annapolis moving forward, like we do with other educational legislation that we started with the Blueprint for Maryland's Future and our commitment to providing that opportunity for students, staff, and parents and others to advocate for our needs. So absolutely, you're going to see more from the students. We'll be, having the students do their own forum again. They did one back in May that was really successful, and hopefully we'll be part of the rollout and presentation of the plan, because I think it's going to take us quite a bit of time to roll this out and really educate everyone on it, and that we'll have to do our own internal more internal forums, every year to keep everyone focused on the plan.
Thank you so very much. Board Member Boozer Struggle and the Climate Change Action Plan Focus Work Group. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate the report. It was great for me to actually listen in on a day, and definitely on a day when you were talking about composting. As one of the community leaders who did composting in my community, in Capitol Heights, we did composting, and I still have my little green trash can under the sink. I know the importance of composting, and the great thing is listening to your speaker today. He is so right, because I was able as a board member to visit a school, one of the schools, couple of schools in the DC area, and check out their lunch and a cafeteria program. And I saw how they were collecting milk, and they much had like 87 milks, and they had food that was just given and left over, and they were collecting it in a basket. It was a basket they would have at the end of the day. And I thought that was interesting. And so when I found out the reason why they was collecting it, different schools had different reasons. One of them offered with other students to be able to take it if needed, since it was unopened, but the other one was composting. So it's interesting that it is a lot of food wasted that other people could be eating if needed it, or it could be used for composting in a county where we have our own composting, and we actually make money from our composting. Is actually the mulch that we have in our county. So it's very important. And I don't know if anyone else have a question or concern they would like to say with the Climate Action Control Group, but I think this is a very needed work group for Prince George's County Public Schools. As you think about us being the system that gets 60% of the county budget, that's taxpayer money. I mean, if we can make sure that we are being, and I always say this word, fiscal responsible, and using that money and doing everything we can do to think outside of the box to make sure growing our own food, some of the things that they talk about, is so important, to start teaching our students now how to be able to do that, even within our school system, saving with having solar panels, not just on the bus, on top of our schools, to save energy and electricity, changing the lighting system. I'm be honest, I get so mad when I see the schools lights on all day long burning here at Walker Mill and other schools when I go past at night, because I've been like, the lights don't go in and out, where's the energy efficient, because all of this is important. It may seem like a little bill to someone else, but it's more than that. It's really more than that, especially, to our communities and our leaders in the community who is trying to get to the point where, as stated, that Prince George's County is a county where we realize that we have to focus on the climate. We see climate change going on right in front of our faces right now. So it's very important that we address it, and we in the school system make sure that we're doing everything we need to make sure that the next generation not only benefit for it, but the next generation is prepared and know how to handle it. I see your hand, Dr. Fawcett.
Thank you, Committee Chair Queen. I just want to take this opportunity really to thank Mr. Jakata and Board Member Boozer Struthers and all the members of the Action Focus Group, because they have been very committed to this work. And I really appreciate the fact that they have engaged us the entire way. As Boozer Struthers, Board Member Boozer Struthers said earlier, they've included us, everyone from our environmental team to Mr. Stefanelli, to Dr. Saunders, the transportation team. We've listened to the presentations, we've engaged back and forth. I do believe they learn from us a lot of what we've already doing, and we've learned from them, even from the outside people, some of the people they brought and have presented to us. And I hope they understand Dr. Golston is very committed to the environment and to making sure that, as Mr. Carter said, the students are committed. No disrespect to anybody on here, but hopefully they'll be around a lot longer than us. So, the work that we do now is helping to save our environment, not only for the current students we have, but for the future students, that we will have, their children. And, now it's kind of like the time, right? Everybody talks about, we'll do all these things in the environment, it costs a lot of money. But if we don't expend those funds now, we won't be able to reap those benefits in the end. And all of these things will be cost effective, because in the end, they will save us money, time, and most importantly, they will save the environment and help us with everything that's going on with the negative effects of climate change. So we have to take advantage of some of these funding streams that are available right now. whether it be the grants, there's a lot, as we talk deeply, as Mr. Scott, about these electric buses, and our plan is, and we're committed to investing heavily in electric buses and making sure, obviously, that the technology, is able to serve the benefits that we need in the county. We have a large county, right? And I'm quite sure, as we commit ourselves to electric buses, we'll commit ourselves to the infrastructure necessary to move those buses throughout this county. But I just didn't want the time to go by. People were talking without interjecting the fact that we definitely appreciate all the work that you put in to the focus group, and we still stand ready as an administration to support you, and we're glad you included us in the whole process. And therefore, when these recommendations come out, we just pretty much got to figure out how we're going to do it. Not, do we want to do it, but how.
That's it.
Thank you.
Mr. Sam Stefanelli.
And I want to, what Dr. Falls said, it goes double for me. I appreciate you inviting us to your group so we could have our input and we could learn from you and you can learn from us. I do have to give Sarah Campbell kudos for our programs. She's my lone environmental person in our department. She's the driving force behind our composting program. And Board Member Queen, part of our composting program is a shared table and the ability to share food first. We're treating composting just like we treat recycling when we use it before we compost it. So that has opened up a whole new world, working with our folks in food services, where we now have the ability in our pilot schools to allow the students to just, whatever food's not eaten is given to our students first. And then we're looking at other places where we can share our food. So less food is going to waste because of this program.
That's awesome.
And I want to make sure that in these times of COVID, we are making sure that it's safe sharing that is occurring.
That shared food, I'm telling you, that's so very important to feed the needy, you guys. So we thank you for that. And I just want to say we want to again thank the Climate Control Action Committee before we move on. And then I want to say this, why I can remember this as for the last 3 years of being a part of the budget committee. When I first got on the committee, and when our CFO came, Mr. Herman Smith, and you guys heard me say all the time, being a person who have a degree in accounting, grants. I am so proud of Prince George's County Public School System. How we now, to me, it's like we realize the importance of saving taxpayer dollars and going after every bit of grant money that we can. I mean, I'm just so proud of Dr. Golson and especially you, the CFO, and the staff, you guys, because you understand the importance. If there's money out there for us to be able to use where we can take and invest the taxpayer dollars in some other way that it would go more towards our students, let's do that. And we have done that so very well, especially over these last couple of years. I'm hearing more and more about the ways that we're going after all of these grants. And I'm just so proud of you guys. And I just want to say thank you, because it's so very important. And we are a school system that is being, fiscal responsibility, with the money that we're getting, even from our county council. When people hear, oh my God, Prince George's County getting billions of dollars, 60% of the budget, but we're using it and we're being very responsible for it, then make sure that we're investing money. And not only just that, we go after other grants and free money to do everything we can to make sure that our scholars are getting the best service possible. And I'm just hoping and praying as we move forward that we will even get better. And we will be top notch, the #1 school system. And we can do that if we all continue to work together to make sure that our scholars and our school system just keep moving up the ladder. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you, because it takes each of us. We can't do it without each other. It takes our CEO, it takes our CFO, our school, it takes the board members, it takes the staff, it takes the parents, it takes the students, it takes the community. And so together, we will all continue to make a difference. So thank you guys for your service. Okay, as we move right along to 3.5, we have the Academic Achievement Committee Chair, Board Member Shada Adams Stafford, and she's going to do a presentation, and she's going to talk about committee. We'll introduce the topic. Oh, you're going to introduce the topic, alternatives?
Sure. And I don't necessarily have a presentation as much as I just have some questions specifically about the most recent budget proposal regarding alternative schools. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about specifically the community-based classroom and just ask a few questions specifically about this year's budget and just thoughts around how we can save that school, to be honest, because I think that they make a really major impact to our school system. So just for some context and some background, in terms of alternative schools here in our county, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have 5 of them. And there was, in the most recent budget, it was proposed to consolidate them. And that would mean closing the community-based classroom, which is a school that takes students from all throughout the county. And, they really take students that are at the end of their journey, in terms of many of them have dropped out of high school to take care of children. These are students that are foster students, they're pregnant teens, they're youth that have been incarcerated, students that really have faced a lot of struggle within their academic career. And so this is really like their last chance as they're preparing to go out into the world. And so, remarkably, this school has had some really great results. They've had a 95% graduation rate, which is higher than our district graduation rate and higher than many graduation rates of comparable programs across the state. They're working with a 93% attendance rate. And that says a lot for students that are, in this position as they are, really attempting to continue and finish their academic career. And so they actually have a relatively small budget compared to other schools in the county, only about $1.2 million for their annual budget. And so I just wanted to ask some questions about the sort of the decisions around, why we're consolidating these particular schools. From my calculation, based on the 2022 budget and the 2023 budget, it seems that keeping the 5 schools open would cost about $1 million or so more. And so I wanted to just get some information just around, the impetus to close them and, really what can be done. Specifically, I have some questions around the cost of the program Edgenuity, which is being used to support students that are in the program.
So, board member, Adam Stafford, I believe that could have been under 3.1 with Prince George's County year-end financial closeout process, to know a little bit about the funds for the school. But as far as asking why are we closing, I think Dr. Goldson, our CEO, would have to answer that question, because we only vote on things that is brought to us from our CEO, and I'm not sure if Ms. Irvin can answer a question that would be something that's guided from our CEO at this point. That may be something that we may have to do at our board meeting, or even under our work session that's coming up. We have the budget work sessions coming up, and that will be a perfect question for the budget work session, where we have hours, almost 4 hours for real, to talk about it. That, which I think is a great idea. I mean, Madam Chair of the board, I noticed you have your hand up, and I'm not correct.
Yes, it's up. And for the record, since this meeting is being recorded, I'd like to make a correction in that I received calls and emails in reference to the consolidation of programs. These are not schools, these are programs, and that distinction should be made. The CBC program that board member Adam Stafford mentioned is not being closed, it's being consolidated. That program currently has 80, and this is coming from Dr. Goldson because I needed clarification as well. That program has 85 students and right now, and they do get adequate funding for the program. And it's just been misleading in that people are referring to it as a school. And these are 3 programs They are consolidating CBC, the technology program, and the third one is the vocational program where the students build the houses. So I just want for the record, it to be clear that we're not talking about closing schools. We're talking about consolidating programs. And it's because of the numbers. And then there's another caveat in there in terms of if those programs don't meet certain criteria, those programs can be taken over by the state. So when you those are kinds of things that need to be discussed with the CEO and her team, as well as understanding the process behind it. So again, those are programs that are being consolidated, not schools being closed.
Thank you so very much, Madam Chair. And I think it is a topic we do need to talk about, if it even being programs. I think it's very important so we understand as a board, but I believe it's still something we may have to do at our budget work session, because we want to make sure that the programs that we understand as a board as a whole about the program, but we still want to make sure these programs, if it's a program that has been working, that has benefited our students, we as a board want to make sure that we're being accountable. I'm being honest with you, if it's a program and if it's 85 students, if 20% of these students have benefit from the program, that's saying something. It's not a program that's going waste. We a school system with thousands of students, and when about time they get to 12th grade, we lose some. But look at the ones who benefit and who graduate. I think them numbers are so important. So we got to make sure that the numbers are balancing out, because if we have programs and students are benefiting these programs, we need to be very, very careful in closing them. But it's still a discussion that may have to go in front of the whole board, because I don't think Ms. Irvin can answer that. Board Member Stafford.
Excuse me, Board Member Queen. I still say that they are not schools, they are programs. And we have to make sure we make that distinction, because there is a difference, and the staff members can relate to that.
Yeah, correction. If we have programs, again, I'm sorry, I do apologize if I said.
And they're not closing, they're being consolidated.
Consolidated, okay. Consolidate, we make sure we consolidation. See, I'm it's still a lot more that we have to learn. I just want to make sure
we need to discuss it.
Right. Yes, I want to make sure it's north, central, and south. I want to make sure it's covering every part of our county. I want to make sure that it's equity across the board, that my people in central Prince George's County, District 6, don't have to go all the way to South Prince George's County where buses don't run. They have to go all the way to north. I want to make sure that they are covered. So it is a discussion that we do have to have. I see your hand too, Mr. Herman Smith, but we got Board Member Adam Stafford, and then we're going to have Mr. Herman Smith.
Yeah, so I guess my question is just around I really was asking about the cost in terms of
Mr. Herman Smith may want to. Does she want to be?
Yeah, I was going to see if he. Yeah.
So I was going to recommend in alignment with what Ms. Queen and Dr. Miller had said, that this really is definitely a very good question for the work session. And I think that the best date for it would actually be the February 3rd one, when Dr. Coley and Dr. Goldson will both be present. And I think they're definitely the best ones to answer it. I don't offhand know the exact amount, but we could certainly get that for you before the work session.
Okay, I think that would be really helpful. I certainly plan to attend, and I can have some questions available. And so I guess some of my questions would just be around, just sort of the cost decisions that went into the consolidation. I also would want to know a bit more about the use of Edgenuity. So in consolidating the programs, it's my understanding that students would then be using Edgenuity, which is like an online program, in order to fulfill their requirements. And as a former educator who taught Edgenuity with very similar students, it is very difficult to support students through that type of program, especially students that need so much support. And so I want to know just a bit more about that decision, and specifically, what could be done to maintain the school the way that it is now. One thing I will say, I'd like to know more about what defines a school versus a program, but I will say, a school community can form around a program. If it is in fact a program and not an actual school, even though it has a principal and it has, full-time staff dedicated to it, I'm not quite sure, sort of how that works, but you know, we're still talking about a community of people that have rallied around some of our most vulnerable learners. And so to make this type of change, I definitely think that it would be great for us to just have some more discussion about, what are some ways that we can maybe shift some funding to support maintaining the way that the program is set up now. So I just wanted to gain some more information, but thank you. And I certainly will be sure to attend the work session to bring up some of those questions as well.
Thank you so very much. And I hear your passion. I understand, but it's not too much experience, but 3 years of experience as a board member. I'm telling you, the work session I have learned is the place for that. What I will suggest, and I know we have staff on now. Ms. Berkeley has been trying to get everything you were saying. I saw her trying to get it. I mean, if it's something she missed, can you just send it to her and we can make sure so staff will have the questions for February the 3rd. So your questions could be prepared to be answered, and you could already have them ready, and that can be done on February 3rd. Because I mean, I understand your passion, and we want to understand. I want to understand a little bit more because I believe, as stated, the programs. If it's a program that is benefiting our students, we, as a board, we will look into it and see what needs to be done so we can protect some of the programs, as stated by Madam Chair. And I understand what you're saying. Whether it's a program of a school, if it has a principal, no matter how it is, we still got to understand a little bit more. I know I don't understand. I don't know anything about it, as even as the chair of the budget committee. So I know we do have 3 budget work sessions, and we can talk about these at the work sessions and see what we can do at these work sessions to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that our scholars is getting everything they need to succeed. Because that is our goal right here in Prince George's County Public Schools, to make sure each and every scholar succeed in everything that they want to do, that their dreams are met, and they do achieve. And we are here to help them achieve. So thank you so very much for bringing that up.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And as stated, we do have a work session on February 3rd, and we'll address that at our budget work session. So thank you so very much. Yes, Madam Chair Miller.
I was just going to add the historical perspective, and since Dr. Fawcett is on this this call, to also add on there that this was the CBC program was the vision of Dr. Jerome Clark. So this program has been around a long time. And if you know the history and understand the history and see the progression of the program and where it was and where it is now, and the other ramifications that I mentioned in terms of them meeting certain criteria, I'm asking Dr. Fawcett to make sure that kind of information is brought to the session for the benefit of those who are not familiar with its evolution. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Miss Valerie Irvin, you heard the request. If you can take it back to our wonderful CEO and let her know. I know Dr. Herdman Smith know the budget part. I know Dr. Fawcett got his call to orders from Madam Chair about the history. I know Dr. Coleman. Hey, Dr. Coleman is on here. So if you all can go back together and bring that information, we would truly appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, will do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This has been an awesome, productive meeting. I appreciate you, each and every one of you. I just want to say that we are down to 5.0. I mean 4.0 follow-ups and next steps. 4.1 for the good of the order. Is there any other for the good of the order? We already know that Mr. Herdman Smith had a new baby boy. Congratulations. Woo, 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 to you and your wife. We know she couldn't have did it by herself, so we're gonna give you a pat.
Thank you very much.
That's right. You don't want to do it by yourself.
But you had to help.
And hey, Mike, what did I tell you? Every time you look at that young man, you say, I did that
Did it.
along with my wife.
Congratulations to you for the good of the order. 4.2, the next step. As we discussed earlier, the board will be holding 3 FY 2023 operation budget work sessions and public hearing in the coming weeks. They will be long, 4 hours. Thursday, January the 27th is our first one. Please join us from 5 p.m. Public hearing will be at 7 p.m. Well, we will hear from you. Please sign up now. This is your opportunity to talk about what you would like to see funds for the budget to go for in FY 2023. We want to hear from you. This is your opportunity to sign up, for us to listen to you as board members. We are here to serve each and every one of us, whether we're elected, appointed, however we got here, we are here to serve you, and we want to hear from our community. The next one will be February the 3rd, 2022, the budget work session at 5 p.m. again. And the hearing at 7 o'clock, another opportunity to hear from you, our constituents, our employees. We want to hear from the community. And then our final one will be on Thursday, February the 10th. Budget work session where you can just listen in. The work sessions, if you don't know, it's from 5 to 7. You just listen to us. You listen to us and ask Dr. Golston and staff all types of budget questions. So that's the work session that goes from 5 to 7. Listen in. But at 7 o'clock, it's the opportunity for us just to listen to you, our community. It's the public hearing. So please take the opportunity to join us at one of these events. Take the opportunity to sign up to speak. It is your opportunity. Unlimited speakers if you sign up beforehand. We'll sit there all night if we have to listen to each and every one of you, but sign up. I see you, Judy Beacon Murray. What you talking about, Miss Queen? But we will. Miss Queen will be here. I'm listening to you all night if we can. Yes, ma'am. Miss Aisha Berkeley.
I just wanted to add that the signups for each public hearing, I wanted to give those dates. So for the first public hearing on the 27th, you can start signing up on January 21st, Friday, January 21st. So each public hearing is being held on a Thursday. So the sign up will open that Friday before that. So for the first public hearing on the 27th, you can start signing up on Friday the 21st. For the second public hearing that's being held on February 3rd, you can start to sign up on Friday, January 28th. And for the third public hearing that's being held on February 10th, you can start to sign up on Friday, February 4th. And all of this is on our website where all of our meeting information is posted with the links and everything you need. It's right there.
And I just want to add, that before I call on you, board member Boozer, that all of these meetings are being held virtually. Please check Prince George's County Public School website for the meeting link, information to do the budget work session, and how to participate in the public hearing, because we really do look forward to hearing from you. So thank you so very much. Yes, board member Boozer.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's just a follow-up to thank Ms. Berkeley for moving that along, because I was one of the board members looking for the information. So thank you for putting that on the Board of Education website. I also noted that in the past, where the budget is actually, the budget section of the website did typically have like a section that had the full schedule of how we get to passing a budget, and I believe a reiteration of these dates and links. So I would like to request that if possible, that could also be placed over there, because that's where it's been for years, has been housed on the budget section of the administration website. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Madam Vice Chair and Board Member Harris, is there anything else that Madam Chair missed or you think we need to know for the good of the order before we close this meeting, sir?
No, I think we're okay. Thank you to our speakers tonight. Thank you for Board Member Boozer and everything you're doing with your committee. And thank you, Ms. Berkeley, for calling out those days for folks to sign up. And again, I really want to triple down on what our chair is saying here and make sure that you sign up, because we do want to hear from you. But thank you so much to everyone for the productive meeting tonight. That's all I have.
I was about to call on you too, Madam Chair of the entire board. Is there anything else you would like to say?
For the record, Board Member Queen is still, I'm sure, very excited about the work that has been done at Central High School. And she really wanted us to have one of the budget meetings there. But due to the pandemic, it's not going to happen. But she's very proud of the work, and she has been very commendable in terms of the work and the staff who had provided her updates on a consistent basis.
Yes, ma'am.
I
Thank you
just
so
want that to go on record as well.
Thank you so very much. And she's right. I really wanted us to be able to do that in person at two of our schools, at Central High School and over there at Duval High School, because I don't think we ever had one at Duval. But I do understand, and Madam Chairwoman and our CEO brought up the fact that because of the new variant of COVID, we must put safety first. The safety of the public speakers who are allowed, because it is open up to each and every one of you. And we don't want you not to come because you're worried about catching this new variant. So what better way for us to be safe than to do it on Zoom? So each and every one of you will have the opportunity. So I do understand, as much as I would have loved to have it at Central High School. I'm so proud. It's Falcons Fly High. But thank you so very much for mentioning it. Okay, at this time, we're going to go to 5.0 closing. We already had our closing remarks. Thank you guys for being here. I know it's been a long meeting, but I appreciate each and every one of you. Much love. It is 2022. Great things are going to happen in 2022. Can I have a motion to
So
adjourn?
move, Madam Chair.
Thank you so very much. A second?
Second,
We got a second. Okay, so let's vote. Madam Miller.
Aye.
Aye. Board Member Boozer Struggle.
aye.
Board Member Harris. Board Member Queen. Aye. The meeting has adjourned. Have a great day. Thank you all again so very much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
Good night.